Welcome to the Trenches. I'm your host, Rob McCallum. Today with me, I've managed to pry away my guest from his busy duties. This is a guy who does not understand that people are supposed to sleep in combination with the sun. He's always either fighting the sun to set or fighting it to rise. With me today, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Alan Saulnier. Alan, how the heck are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me here, Rob.
Oh, it's been a pleasure, and I'm glad our schedules worked out. The one thing I always laugh about, and I poke fun about how much you work and stuff, I see you Pacific Standard Time at like 11 at night, editing, I'm editing, and I'm thinking, oh crap, that's 2 a.m. Toronto time, Eastern Standard Time. I'm like, well shit, if he's working at 2 a.m., that means I got at least another 3 hours to go. Problem is, when I finish at 2 a.m., you're still working. I don't know how you do it. I think you're part zombie, that you don't require sleep. Maybe you're a robot. Any secrets to that discipline?
I've been accused of being a robot, that's for sure. You know what it is? I think it's just the passion of what I'm doing. It just keeps me going, and you know the task is fairly daunting. So if you let it get the better of you, eventually you're not gonna get your project done or what have you. So it's just better to push through.
And it's also cheaper when you can wear so many hats and do the things yourself and still come out with a quality result by having that diverse skill set. So speaking to that degree, why don't you tell us, you know, we've already mentioned that, like, who you are, but what do you do and how long have you been doing it? It's going to be really hard to put you into one category, but try your best to kind of explain to people maybe what you don't do. Just give us a little history of who you are and where you come from.
Sure. Well, I'm a filmmaker, and that's probably just the best way to explain it, because, you know, to say I'm a writer or I'm a director or a producer or what have you, it's not really fair. So by saying I'm a filmmaker, it kind of encompasses a large number of hats that I wear. You know, I believe being a storyteller or a filmmaker nowadays, especially in the independent docket, you kind of have to wear more than one hat. So when I started 26 years ago now, I didn't really, yeah, I know, I just aged myself quite a bit there. I didn't really have a lot of opportunities to work in the film industry, so I was really forced to you know, learn all the skills myself. And I started with linear editing, believe it or not. So
right.
I was, you know, back in the prehistoric days, and then once nonlinear editing came about, I started learning more about the editing process and how it works. It's just something I've been more or less forced to do, wear all these different types of hats. And so, you know, obviously, when the budgets get bigger, I'll be reducing the number of hats that I've been wearing. But primarily, I'm a filmmaker, and I just like telling great stories.
Okay, so I'm gonna break it out a bit there. You mentioned that, you know, you have some experience with editing. I too learned on linear tape-to-tape machines. I actually never had a chance to play with like a Moviola, where you actually, you know, splice film together and stuff. But not only are you an editor, you're a director, you're a writer, you're a producer, you're a DP. You can gaff, you can grip. You can consult, you can point fingers, you can probably make a mean fried egg sandwich for craft services if you had to.
God forbid.
You really are a jack of all trades in the best of all sense. But I had the pleasure of meeting you and working with you on Unearthly, a film that we shot in 2011. And we first started, I think we connected on the phone in June of that year, and we shot August 1st. You were busy doing another film at the time. Surprise, surprise.
Yeah.
And we first started talking on the phone about what this film could be in the reference films that I like, and I basically said to you, you know, Indiana Jones, you know, pick whatever one, Jurassic Park, Alice in Wonderland to some degree, and that was the initial pitch. You know, I said, I don't need to get too fancy. It's going to be a run and gun kind of production, and you had the experience, and you had done stuff where you shot outdoors. And it just seemed to make sense to me. You were recommended by Jeff Hart, the producer on the project, who I know you've worked with since on other things. What was your initial thoughts of the project, I guess, and what drew you to it? I mean, and maybe just talk about your overall approach to selecting projects, whether it's stuff that you initiate or stuff that people ask you to be a part of. What goes through your mind when a project is in front of you? And maybe if you want to use Unearthly or some of the other stuff as specific examples, you know, as the hook.
Of course. Well, first thing, when a project is presented to me by another director or producer, and I'm not being brought on that aspect as a director type role, I quite often look at, is it the kind of film that I would make, for one? Is it something I would enjoy doing? And primarily, if it's not strictly for pay, and a lot of times when you're doing independent stuff, it isn't primarily a financial reason that you'd be a part of a project. It has to be a project that you would either see yourself shooting or you just want to be a part of in some way.
So,
and when you
so I didn't make you rich on Unearthly. You didn't like retire to the hillside after the shoot was done.
Only an experience.
Oh, okay, okay. Go ahead.
It wasn't a financial motive, although there was obviously compensation, but primarily when you and I first talked about the project, being a lover of that adventure type genre, Jurassic Park, Indiana Jones, the classic Steven Spielberg grand films, I knew that we would get along really well right off the bat, and it's the kind of project that I love being a part of. It's fun. It's got a lot of action in it. It's got a lot of cinematic opportunity. So I thought, yeah, this is the kind of project I want to be a part of, and that is primarily when I make that decision. It's a fundamental part of it. So there's one thing about coming on for financial gain, which is great, but realistically, now in my career, I want to do projects I want to do, and I would rather pass up a bigger paycheck and do a project that I want to do rather than take the big pay and go home miserable every night because I'm not enjoying myself.
That's kind of where I am too. It's I don't get a ton of projects thrown my way. The ones I do, it's usually to come on as an editor, and it's either got to be the people that I'm working with, or there's got to be something about the project that makes sense because a lot of people say, well, we'll give you back end points, and those back-end points take a long time to collect on. Not only do you have the expenses of the project, you have all the deferred salaries, and then where in the back-end payment schedule are you? You're probably not going to be the first to get paid. So like you said, it's really got to come down to, do you love the project? Is it worth the cause? And if you take it on, what might you not be able to take on at the same time? So when people ask me to do the stuff like on little or deferred payment, it's always like, well, if you want me involved, you can either have it fast or you can have it cheap. If you want it fast, you got to pay me. If you want it cheap, it's kind of on my schedule because, I'll take projects on, and I'm in some right now where I'm getting like basically nothing for it. But if I get a paying gig, they've got to understand that that's going to be the next priority for me, because we all got to pay our bills and stuff. Let's talk a little bit about Unearthly. We meet in Oakville. I think we met at Burger King when we actually first met for the first time. We talked with some individuals at Sheridan College who gave us some tips on VFX shooting and stuff. And unfortunately, I think one of the things they said is, well, anything is possible. Yeah. So, okay, no problem. The script isn't locked. Let me go do a rewrite. Thankfully, it was a pretty locked draft. But then, we're shooting in about a week's time, and it's a small shoot, man. I mean, it doesn't matter like what the budgetary numbers were or anything like that, and we can stay away from the whole financial aspect of it. But it was literally like you, me, Adam, who was our location sound guy. We had Brianne as well doing location sound, and whoever was kind of available to PA, grip, and gaff, walking through.
And you know what? Honestly, that's exactly kind of how Epic Adventures was too. So it was in the same spirit, and yeah, that's exactly what it was like.
And you know what? As much as it would have been nice to have that, that 2-ton grip truck and to have generators and to have like an army of PAs, there was just something just efficient enough about what we were trying to do, what we accepted that, okay, this is how it's going to be, this is how it's going to turn out, that it just made sense to go in with a small army, shoot, and just dart around the forest for an entire month. Now, of course, there were some casualties with poison ivy. You and Adam know more about that. How it still happened to be that I didn't get poison ivy, but I was with you guys for all the shots. Like we were all.
I think it was probably from dehydration and exhaustion because you were filming, editing, and then filming again. So you probably your body just said, you know what, we can't handle another stress, so we're just gonna fight this off. I'm sure that's what it was.
We're just gonna take the proactive approach and fight off the poison oak. Don't pass it on to anybody else. Just do what you got to do. But yeah, I mean, go ahead.
When you have a production like this, and you're limited for budget. I'm not saying that Unearthly had no budget, but
it had no budget. Let's be honest, it had zero.
Realistically, what you can do with a small budget and what you can do with no budget are two different things. But when you have a production crew like we had a small movable force we were able to get a lot of this stuff done quickly because of that fact. So you know what? We add 10 more people, we probably would have had 10 more days of production because of that. And a lot of people who are not either in the industry or not used to working with small productions don't understand the value that having less can sometimes give you. And that's exactly what Unearthly had, I found. We were able to say, you know what? Let's quickly rehearse the scene. Let's shoot it. We got the light. We got the sound. Bam it out really quick. If we got the performances we want, we move on. And yeah, we didn't have the budget, but we made up for it in many, many different ways because of the fact that we were a small unit.
Yeah, and you talk about the process of getting to the location, small rehearsal, and then bang it out. You know, we used a lot of theater actors for basically the cast, and I don't think they were quite prepared for that process of, okay, so we're going to start from here to here, and we're just going to cover like this half page, even though the scene is like three pages long, and then we're going to shoot the rest from this angle or go to this part. I think specifically when our heroes enter the zone for the first time and they find the tracking chip and then they find the burnt backpack and then the piece of the medallion and then they're by that log that falls over where they're arguing about who's going to go deeper and stuff. You know, that's all one scene, but it's broken into 4 parts. And then it's broken into several camera angles, just to give everybody who's listening a brief rundown of, you know, the film creation process. You know, you shoot a wide, you shoot close-ups on people. You know, if you have the luxury to kind of shoot extra, that's great. But, you know, you got to pick and choose. And I think for the first week, maybe, it was kind of just feeling that process out with some of our cast members in that respect, and then just getting our crew up to speed on how this is going to go so that by week 2, we're off to the races a bit. I mean, what do you think about that?
I agree, and you know, we were fortunate because we had very talented people, but on top of that, we had people who were very enthusiastic for the project. So where we lacked in, they weren't prepared for that kind of that shooting. They were making up for it because they were so gung-ho to be there. So although we were like, oh man, I'm not used to this, they were just kind of like swept up in the excitement of it. So we managed to muddle through. Whereas, you know, if you got a different group of people, we probably would have ran into a lot of problems. We're going, you know, I'm not used to working like this. Can we have more prep time? So I think, honestly, we had the right chemistry of group, and we were able to get through it. But you're right. That's exactly how it is. And a lot of times people, when they're working in film production for the first time, and they're like, you know what, this is nothing like a stage performance. And don't get me wrong, I love theater actors. I think they're so well trained. They have such commitment and dedication. But really, you know, the two beasts are very, very different. And, you know, it does take a little bit of climatizing to that new beast for sure.
Yeah, and it's I think we totally got blessed because it was baptism by fire, and everybody just had to find their A game immediately. Like I've said in other interviews and other segments and other shows on the Wired In Network here, that our villain, Greg, who played Franco, came up from Tennessee for 6 days. We had our antagonist for 6 days only. And I remember talking to him. We shot in the forest at first with him, doing some of his stuff, you know, wandering around, you know, ordering his henchmen to do this, that, and the other. And then we went back to shoot some green screen with him. And while he was getting ready, he's like, so let's have a good long chat about this character, where he comes from. I'm like, I can't, man. It's like, you know, we talked on the phone for 2 hours 2 months ago. That's kind of the character stuff that I can do.
You got to bring it. You got to bring it yourself.
We got to shoot. Any questions, you know, don't worry about firing it off while we're shooting. It's like, you know, there's no egos involved. Let's just get it done. If you don't understand something, we'll rework it. And I think that's the other thing that really helped. We weren't afraid to attack that script and rip it apart, not only to suit location, but suit the actors and the gear that we had.
Exactly. And on top of that, the type of project you were shooting, it was a big, grand adventure. It wasn't a character piece. So we gave the actors you gave the actors a little more freedom to say, oh, you know what if my character did this? Or what if I just did that? Or they didn't even ask you and they just did it. And whether it worked or not was able to be determined right on that moment. It wasn't like, let's sit down for 2 weeks going over the motives and the mentality of the characters, when realistically it's a plot-driven story. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's what Indiana Jones is. It's not like you sit down with Indiana Jones and discover his inner heart, and you know you learn that over the course of all the movies. So it being the type of film that it was, it gave us that freedom again to have the actors kind of just bring their own piece to it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be the first to attack my own script and say the actors brought a lot of character stuff, especially in the early scenes in the film. I think where Sam and Dighton were in the kitchen arguing that back and forth, there was a texture that they added to, like, you can sense there's a backstory there, and just some of the stuff with Grandpa involved and the way Cassidy first comes in before the grand adventure begins. There's enough stage set that we know that these characters are flawed and they got stuff to work on, that by the end of it, that when we get those scenes where they're out of the zone, I won't give away the ending. Some of them survive, some of them don't. When they're out of the zone, there is at least a little bit of an arc. But you're right, it's a plot-driven thing. Now, you make it sound like we had, the best luck ever, that the month was like flawless, and sure, it was fast-paced and low budget. I mean, okay, I'll just come out, that I'm going to say there's really nothing off limits. Anything that I regret, I've already atoned for, and, we can talk about anything specifically, but what sticks out in your mind as some of the more difficult stuff to shoot, be it, you see it on the page and all of a sudden the day comes that we're supposed to shoot it and it's like, I don't know how the fuck we're going to do this, or I don't know, just tell me about some of the challenges that, stick out as we walk down memory lane.
I think a lot of times it was a scheduling issue where it was like, okay, we have to attack this, but we have to attack it quickly. So, we're racing against daylight because we were shooting outside primarily, and in locations where you couldn't bring lights without a whole crew. And so we were using natural sunlight, and we were using, did we even have a reflector? I can't even remember.
Yeah, we got 2 reflectors, yeah.
Yeah, so we had 1 reflector, I think it was. And so it was like, okay, well, we are very limited. We have to shoot this now, and we have to shoot it before the guy on the lawnmower starts up again. I think you remember that day. Yeah. Who begged him to stop for 10 minutes.
Or the guy next door who's putting in a stone patio.
Right, exactly.
Or before the racetrack starts up again.
Or the airplanes fly over. There's a million technical issues. I think the biggest challenge for me as a DP was, there was so much kinetics involved with the story. So we would have dialogue scenes that took place in a forest that was uneven ground, and at the same time, you wanted a certain look for it when they're telling the story. So we're using almost a telephoto lens to shoot a dialogue scene that's walking. So having to create like a tool, like what we call the Allen toe, and me tied to an actor, so I could keep the distance from the camera and the actors relatively the same. So they tried to keep them in focus the whole time. So there were some technical issues, but realistically, I think the project, right, like all the way through, there were days that were difficult. That goes to say without any movie. Like you can't. Every movie is a new set of challenges. It's a new set of problems. Whether it's cast, crew, technical, visual effects, there's a million things that can go wrong. But the point is, there was nothing really that stood out in my mind as saying, oh, this production, if it was only planned better because of this. I don't think there's a lot of stuff that you could have planned better. I think it was just trial and error. Okay, these are the new set of problems. These are how we learned to deal with them. It didn't work every single time, but we were able to get through them because we had such a strong group of people who were just loving what they were doing. You could really sense that, and it makes the day go easier. So yeah, that's really what stands out for me, is just the fact that we were, constantly faced with a new set of problems, and that's part of the fun of making movies, I think.
See, you're too positive to talk about war stories because you're positive and you have the experience to know that these things come and pass and it isn't worth hanging on. The Allen toe, I'll just talk about it for a minute. Basically, we're doing a walk and talk, Aaron Sorkin style. We had a group of people in front of us, and Allen was walking backwards on uneven ground, handheld Steadicam rig. And the pacing was fine. It was the distance between him and the subjects. And for anybody out there in photography knows that if that distance change, you're going to get slight focal variation. So the actors kept going in and out of focus. And, from an editing point of view, because I was editing as well, you ideally want the whole thing in focus because you don't know if it's all going to play out as one shot. And I ended up cutting between the wide shot showing everybody, and then we switched on a wide angle lens to film them separately, or maybe we just focused on them separately. But the way we got around it was, and we didn't have any like measurement or rope or way to do a focus puller. God no, he had to walk backwards and pull focus on his own. So we basically got an XLR cable, and I know this is the sin of all audio people, and we tied it around the actors and Alan so that as long as we kept the cable taut, that the focus in theory wouldn't change. And sure enough, it worked. And going forward, because I'm a glutton for punishment, I used that shot more and more, but this time we were prepared. Now, if only we would have thought of this, at the beginning of the shoot, because day one, it was the very first shot that we did. I don't know if you remember, the group of them were walking towards the shack.
I do. I
and that was the same
yeah.
problem. The road was much more rockier there, and that was the main thing with that instance. But it was the focus that was driving us nuts. So we got around it.
I do have a war story. I just thought
Okay, I'm interested.
The Steadicam rig. I don't think most people who wear Steadicam rigs or I guess they're called Glidecam.
Yeah,
are
Glidecam.
expected to wear them for 16-hour days. I remember I would come to set every morning and I'd be like, "You need me in the steady rig?" And you'd be like, "Oh yeah, it's all handheld today." And so I'd strap in, and what I eventually started calling the Iron Man outfit.
Yeah.
Because I would put it in this outfit and I would be in this steady rig for anywhere from 10 to 12 hours, obviously breaking for lunch. But I honestly, it was so physically challenging just from that aspect. But don't get me wrong, by the end of it, it was a badge of honor.
You got so used to wearing it that I don't think you were able to sleep at night after the film finished without donning some sort of protective vest.
It was my new house coat.
Well, I mean,
but it was a fun challenge, but it was quite a feat to wear it for that long. I remember after after the first week, Adam, our sound guy, began cracking my back at the end of every day.
Yeah.
He'd pick me up and snap my back. But yeah, I got proud of it at the end of the whole entire shoot, so it was fun.
But can you imagine trying to do all that stuff without a Steadicam rig? I mean, it was part by design. And then once we were doing the more suburban stuff, I told you the stylistic choice was to do essentially the beginning of the film and the tail end all on tripod, so that while you were in the zone, it had that loosey-goosey kind of kinetic feel to it. But I don't think logistically we could have dragged the tripod around and move as fast as we did.
I think it would have added a few more days of production just because of the fact that setting it up, leveling it off, all that kind of stuff. And it wasn't great. I've used Steadicam rigs before, but never to the extent that I did on this project. So in a way, it kind of made me a little bit of a master of the project. I don't know. Maybe you've seen more footage than I have, so I don't know if it's perfect as a Steadicam rig shot, but
yeah, no, it's pretty consistent. I mean, and I've talked to a lot of people who aren't in the film industry, average Joe family members and stuff like that. And they don't find it shaky. They find it like a comfortable loose. And when people don't complain about the shakiness of the frame, it's usually the thumbs up. You know how it is in the film industry. When you don't hear something, you've done a good job. Or when people don't notice something and don't second guess it, it tends to work out. I'm trying to, along the lines of physical kind of torment and torture. It just happened to be like the hottest summer on record in Ontario, a humid place, and it wasn't just that it was hot, and it wasn't just that you were wearing Steadicam gear. But I'd say, Alan, go run up this hill and follow this character, or go run down this hill, or run beside them in the forest and look ahead but film sideways, and I'll sit here.
Well, I'm lucky in a way because whenever I start making a movie, and this is, a lot of times what people are saying, "Oh, you're a robot." I do the same thing on my projects. I'll get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and I'll retire at 5 o'clock the next day. And it's just the passion that drives me. So when I'm out, whether it's in the freezing cold weather or the extreme heat, and I haven't eaten and I haven't had a coffee and I haven't slept, I don't notice any of those things as long as I'm making a movie.
Yeah, as soon
as the movie's over, then I'm starving, tired, and ready to call it a day. But that's the beauty of it, is the passion drives me past the pain. So
let's talk about that a little bit. I mean, the one thing that everybody will recall, and without doubt, no matter what happens between then and for the rest of time, it's going to be impossible to argue that your energy level was always at 110% in those conditions with that gear. You are the most positive individual I've ever had to work with. You've always said yes. There may be a slight pause before you say yes, as the wheels turn. It's not a question of yes or no. It's like, okay, how am I going to do this? And it's like, yeah, okay, we can do this. I can go run in that lake and shoot afar while the current breezes by me. Yes, I can go slide down that hill with your camera behind the girl as branches flap in front of me. Where does
I lost a pair of pants. No, my underwear or something like that.
Your shorts ripped. Your shorts ripped. So
Yeah.
what we're talking about here is there's this part where the girl wakes up after kind of being left for dead in the zone, and when she awakes, she's in no safer place than she last remembered, and she basically runs away from this creature that is, just behind a set of trees, more or less. And as she runs, she basically jumps down an almost vertical drop, like probably like a 20-degree drop. And
Like a romantic stone slide.
yeah, very much so. And I
Yeah.
wanted a point of view shot. I mean, we got coverage of her sliding down and whatnot, but I needed a point of view shot to really sell it because you know how speed looks on film versus in reality. It just didn't work. So I said, Alan, what do you think? Well, I'll jump down there. Sure, no problem. Yeah, whatever, no problem. On the second take, his entire shorts like ripped off. It was great. It was fantastic. And
I
then
think I did super times too.
and that wasn't the only hill slide. We had the massive one where all the heroes who are looking for this girl go down. And
Right.
I swear to this day, and the other hill shot, none of it sped up. It's all real action.
Oh yeah.
And
Well, once you add a little bit of movement to the camera, it changes everything. But you know what, Rob? I demand a lot from my actors. I demand a lot from my crew. And so if I was to go on to your production as a DP, or whether I'm just moving some wires, I want to make sure that I give it 100%, because I don't want to ever have anybody come back and say, you know what, I wish you would have just tried a little bit harder. And I'm not saying I would kill myself for your project, but in the same breath, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And I want what I do to be as good as I can possibly be. So the fact that you asked me to jump down a hill, you know what? That's something I would do for my own project. So why the hell wouldn't I do it for yours? What kind of a name would I have as a filmmaker if I, tried to make didn't live up to that standard? So yeah, it really wasn't. It wasn't like a pain in any way, shape, or form. I love making movies, so it was an easy decision.
So the energy was definitely appreciated, especially when we were shooting around London, Ontario as the main shooting backdrop. But then later, because we were forced, like rain delay, to find another location, and you had suggested early on maybe Elora, so we went scouting to the Elora area, and they have a massive gorge, which is nice. And then some of that stuff, primarily the last week and a half, there were the 90-minute trip out to Elora, shoot all day until basically get up before the sun rises, 90
Right.
minutes out, shoot, and then after sunsets, 90-minute drive back. That'll wipe you away right away. I mean, that 90 minutes just first thing in the morning sitting around, especially since for 3 weeks we were, basically just waking up once we got on set, and then we were
Right.
going and going. So that was hard. But the other thing that I gotta think must have been hard is just the level of commitment and blind faith that you must have had in what I was suggesting. I mean, I was literally, as we were saying, okay, you'd say to me famously, "What's next?" And I'd say, "Okay," and I would move you like an action figure, and I would say,
Yeah.
"We'll shoot from here," just because there wasn't time to talk about. Okay, so I
Yeah.
want to do this. I want to do this. I would literally physically slide you over here, and then I would start blocking all the cast, and then you would say, "So what's the frame? What's the shot?"
Exactly.
Because you would just say
You know-
you would say planted where I'd leave you. So I mean, that's got to be frustrating.
You know what? It isn't, because as a one-man show for a lot of the productions that I do my own, the communication breakdown is so fundamental. So, for example, if I'm the director, I'm also the writer, the editor, and also the DP. I don't have to communicate to myself what's going on. I already know what I want. But because you're directing the film, I have to kind of just sit back and say, you know what? He's got the helm. I'm going to trust that he knows what he's doing. You knew a lot about movies. I talked to you before I took the job. I wouldn't have taken it if I didn't trust you. And not only that, you have to trust the director. And if you don't trust the director, why are you on the project in the first place? Right? So if you move me in that one position, I could let myself, get all bent out of shape. What's the point of that, though? The end of the day, it's either does it get done, or it gets done, or it doesn't get done. And if it doesn't get done, then someone failed somewhere along the lines. I just didn't want to be the person to bring that failure. So if you move me in that one spot, I just tried to get the only information that I needed to get the job done. So yeah, you need the wide shot? I got the wide shot. You need me here? You put me there. That's fine. I don't need you to vocalize it. If you can save your mental process on that. It's a lot of work as a director, and just being a director myself, I know the kind of weight that carries. So you having to not only block the actors, prep the next scene in your head. You're trying to think, oh, how am I going to cut this together? How is this going to all fit? Does the story make sense? Like, you're constantly questioning those things. So the last thing you need me is to be challenging you about where I'm standing, how I got to where I'm standing. What difference does it make? We're there to shoot a movie. Right?
I guess I should illuminate the audience and let them know how much time we didn't get to spend together. Like, we are really not exaggerating that it was, okay, great, day one, let's go. We had like a dinner the night before we shot where we talked, but it was more just like, just relaxing, enjoying the last moments before the battle was set to begin. But I mean, it's not like I gave you a set of storyboards really ahead of time, and all the storyboards I did.
A little bit.
But
the part, the locations dictated what we shot.
Well, that's just it. I had done all overhead blocking from Vegas while I was here, based on the script and on the plane ride there. And then I had a week and a half once I got to London to see some of the locations, and then I had to redo some of them. But essentially, it was the same plan, and anybody that's seen my writing knows it isn't like architectural drawings where it's very clear what's going on. So, I mean, Alan really took blind faith when I said, okay, we're going to do this. And I remember there was this one point, and I think it was the only point that I started to question what I was doing, and it lasted maybe for a couple hours until I got back to the edit suite. But both you and Adam had called me on the same day or talked to me the same day. And you wanted to get together for lunch because we were doing night scenes, so that we basically had the entire day off, which was kind of a blessing for the pace that we were going. And there was just some concern. I don't even remember what it was, but there was some concern whether I'm getting the right shots, whether it's going to cut together, or whether it's going to pan out. I mean, I don't remember too much, but I remember both of you guys wanting to talk about it to make sure I knew what I was kind of doing. Do you remember anything along that?
I do remember that. It was just a fundamental general concern that maybe you weren't vocalizing any fears, or you felt like you were rushed. I remember I worked on a movie called The Rock Garden, and it was a 4-day shoot. It was a $96,000 short film. It was 6-minute short.
Wow.
Just tremendous budget. I was the first AD on it, and excellent project. But I remember at one point, the director came to me and was asking if she should cut some shots. And, it was getting near the end of the day, and people were tired. And a lot of times directors will feel guilty for pushing people to the limit. And I feel...
Oops.
No, but well, maybe you didn't feel guilty, but they worry about the toll that the production is having on people. And, I told her, listen, you've got one shot to shoot your movie. People are going to go home a little bit tired tonight. But for the rest of their lives, they're going to think about when they watch the movie, oh, that shot looks like crap. Oh, this scene doesn't cut well together. So when we called you, it was more of a question of make sure you're getting what you need, because although you think we might be tired or complaining, everybody complains when they're on a movie set. That's just a survival tactic. But if you went away going, you know what, maybe I'll just cut this day short, and not get the wide shot I need, or take 4 or take 5 or take 78. If you didn't do that, in the end you might be kicking yourself. And realistically, we're all there to make a good movie. We want a good product. So we were calling to make sure that you were willing to say to us, guys, I need one more take, or I need one more shot, just so that you weren't painting yourself into a corner because you were being nice or worried that people, were tired or what have you. And, as being a director, that was my fundamental purpose of that, is just to reassure you, to say, we all realize we're here to shoot a movie, and we know it takes a lot of extra work, especially with a limited budget and, limited resources. So, yeah, we did call in that concern, but it wasn't any point where we were going, oh, Rob doesn't know what he's doing. It was more just make sure Rob knows that we're here for him.
To be completely honest, and maybe it's not a good thing to throw out there, I don't really think I quite understood what everybody had been enduring. I know there was several times the producers were coming up to me saying, this cast member really needs to rest. You're pushing him or her too hard. And I was so out of the human element in, at the end of the day, I always said it's not worth anybody getting hurt. I was always making sure that safety was priority. But as far as, getting tired and stuff, I was so beyond what kind of mattered in that department, because it was like, okay, we need the scene, I need to get it done, and it just wasn't in the realm of, is it questioned, I guess. And maybe I can pay better attention to that. But we tailored a lot of scenes to stuff down the road. And I guess one of the war stories I'll bring up is, do you remember when we were shooting at the gravel pit and we had an injury? We got
Right.
3/4 the way through a sequence, and then Dorothy Downs, who was our producer, who was also a cast member, twisted her ankle. Again, hot day. Like we shot 3/4 of the sequence, all the angles, everything was going well. And then comes a part near the end of the sequence where they've got to bolt away from these creatures that we plan on CGing in. And the first take of the first shot, so I have no other takes that I can use to kind of wrap things up. Boom, she twists her ankle. Production has to stop. And there's nothing we can do. And now we're sitting on our hands.
Exactly. And you know what? I've been in that position so many times. When I was shooting Epic Adventures, I was fortunate enough to rent out a battleship for like this really, really ridiculous, affordable price. But I only had enough money in the budget to do it for one day. So, of course, as soon as I find out I have a battleship, I write this massive sequence because of like production value, amazing, cool battleship.
Right.
And I'm thinking, let's just get them all there. We'll film because we have it for 24 hours. Let's just spend 24 hours on it. And I'm thinking my energy level, my capabilities, because I'm passionate about what I'm doing and it's my project.
Right.
And then I don't think, oh, you know what? It's freezing cold. We're filming in winter. The battleship doesn't have heat. So my actors endured almost 24 hours of a non-heated location. We had food, we had warm food and stuff like that, but it was slippery, and one of my actors slipped, fell, and hurt her head. And the first thing I'm thinking, oh my God, we got to get this done because the sun's coming out. And I'm forgetting, oh yeah, she just banged her head. But that's the danger of being so passionate about your project, is that you're so worried about the life of the project that you forget the life of the actors. And I'm not saying that you run dangerous production, but you have to remind yourself constantly that there is a human element to it, and not everybody is as involved as you are. And yeah, that's a common situation. David Fincher, who's my favorite director, he does like 100 takes sometimes.
Yeah.
And I imagine the crew must be exhausted, going, "Come on, man, I can't see any freaking difference. Every take is almost identical." But I'm sure in his mind he's thinking, no, we got to keep pushing.
Yeah.
I don't care how hungry we are.
Well, I mean, and injuries can happen anywhere. I mean, you and I are talking about action adventure films with chase sequences, but I mean,
yeah,
I think at one point I slipped trying to get into my truck, and I like fell on my tailbone or something stupid, or I slipped in the water while we were shooting in the river there. You were standing up, and I didn't want to wear my shoes, so I was walking on my bare feet on these sharp rocks, and sure enough, I fell in the water. It was fine and everything, but it's really hard to gauge what other people's energy level is and what their pain receptors are. And I think when you're spearheading a project, you always have an extra added boost because it's it's your baby, it's your thing. It's like why you can work around the clock because it's yours, and that you're gonna not profit, but you get to be proud of what it is. You want to take pride in what you're doing, and at some point, it's sure you can have a passionate crew and cast, and we did for Unearthly. But everybody's got to reach that point at some point where it's like, I can't go anymore. I physically am unable to continue any longer. I need to go home and sleep.
And you know what? Sometimes those people do you the biggest favor.
Yeah, absolutely.
You don't realize how tired you are. You don't realize how much is slipping by the gates of control. You're thinking, oh, I want to make sure I get this shot perfectly or that shot perfectly, but because you're tired, you're mentally exhausted, you're thinking about 12,000 different things. You don't pick up on every single thing either. So they say, you know what, let's call it a day. You're kind of forced to call it a day as well, even though you don't want to. But then the next day you come at it and your project looks twice as good because someone had the common sense to say, you know what, 24 hours is a long day of shooting.
Yeah, and that decision-making process goes both ways, not only trying to do too much, but you start making decisions where you say, well, I don't need it after all. And oh no, we can skip that chunk of dialogue. Oh, wait a second, isn't that chunk of dialogue critical to the entire plot of the film?
Exactly, yeah.
So, yeah, you got to be guarded. Let's talk quickly about VFX and green screen shooting. We didn't probably approach this the right way. I mean, learning curve for me for sure across the board on everything, but probably mostly for effects. As I've told some other people and talked on the show, there was over 400 effect shots in one form or another, and I'm not talking color correction. And Jurassic Park had under 100 originally, so we're doing 4 times what Jurassic Park had on not even 1% of their budget. So of course that's bananas right out of the gate. But what do you think about shooting green screen VFX just on principle? What did you take away from what we did on Unearthly? And obviously, because I know what you're working on right now, and we can talk about that right after this. How much did you decide to employ for your current project?
Well, just working on Unearthly, it was, the technology is still relatively new as far as the independent filmmaker is concerned. Yeah, we've had rotoscoping and green screen technology for the low budget films for a while, but realistically the software was still pretty expensive. It was still, you needed an expert to come in and talk about it. For example, when I shot on the Rock Garden, we had a visual effects guy on set all the time to say what he could and could not do.
Right.
We didn't have that luxury. We kind of based it off of what we thought we would be able to get away with.
And we were told we could do anything.
That's right. And ironically, it's a blessing, but it's also a curse because there is that trial and error. And I remember we shot, I think it was 2 or 3 days. 3 days of green screen?
There were 6 days that we were shooting in there.
Wow. But yeah, like you think you go into it going, okay, I think we can do this. I know how I would cut it together. I know how we'd pull it off. I've watched all the tutorials. I've kind of played around with a little bit, but say I've played around with a single shot compared to, we're doing a whole sequence of green screen. That's a very dangerous game. And to be honest with you, it was an eye opener for myself as well. It's like, okay, how much of a corner do I want to paint myself into? And not only that, because it's independent and I'm doing most of the jobs myself, how much time do I want this project to take? Because whenever you see the end credits of a big feature film, and a lot of people take this for granted when they're doing independent stuff, is there's like 250 people in the end of the credits, as opposed to 5 people at the end of a credit who are really doing the bulk of the jobs, right?
Yeah.
So here you are, you're responsible for all these jobs. You can't just do them all at the same time. You have to line them up, this job, then this job, then this job. So just from an hourly standpoint, how long it's going to take to put it together from start to finish, you're 10 times at least how long it's going to be. So the time factor alone was an eye-opener. But I think nowadays, because even since we shot the movie, the technology has done leaps and bounds just with the Adobe After Effects alone. You can do some amazing, amazing stuff. And whereas when we shot the movie, the 3D motion tracking software that didn't exist yet for After Effects now exists, and you're in the visual effects process. So I think you'll muddle through. Were there lessons to be learned there? Absolutely, yeah. We could have completely done things differently, and I think we probably should have, as far as time concerned, in the consideration, because I think you missed your deadline for it, because it was Christmas you were aiming to have it done by, right?
Yeah, but I was aiming to have it done by Christmas, and at Christmas I was 10 shots away. I'm 8 shots now. There was a lot of political stuff that kind of happened and derailed us for about 4 months. So,
and which is another large part about making movies. Is you say, okay, I've blocked out how long it's going to take, but you always forget to add the human factor, and you usually need to times by 5.
Yeah, and here's the deal, I aim to have it done and ready to showcase on Christmas, but then nobody's going to come see a movie in a city that they don't currently live in at Christmas time anyways. There's the weather factor to consider in Canada, and I'm not going to rush to get this arbitrary deadline if the film isn't ready. I mean, it's
more humiliating than anything else.
Yeah, it's done when it's done. I'll show somebody, I'll show the gang a 90% cut, knowing that there's 10% that I got to do, whether it be on the audio side or some color correction. But I'm not going to show them a cut without, that has a missing shot. So, I just, and I was really pushing for that Christmas deadline for the longest time, saying it's got to be done and getting stressed out. And then it was like, you know what, it'll be done when it's done. It's already taken a year and a half. since we finished shooting? What is another 2 or 3 months really to make it that much better?
I'll tell you one thing. With the technology that we have right now, as far as a visual effects standpoint, I kind of wish I was starting my film career out right now.
Oh yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
if I was 16 right now and I first picked up the camera and thought, how am I going to do this? I don't know how many times I've reinvented the wheel as a filmmaker.
Yeah.
Just because I didn't have I didn't have the ability to go to school. I had to buy all the books myself. I had to learn all the stuff myself. I practiced. I made movies that sucked because I had to learn,
Yeah.
how to cut, how to shoot, how to block, all that stuff. If I was starting out right now, I could sit online and watch 1,000 tutorials and be.
That's just it. Yeah.
But the beauty thing is, I also got to reinvent the wheel and trial and error and all that kind of stuff. So, right nowadays, as far as visual effects is concerned, there's limitations, but really the creativity is the fundamental aspect of it. If you can think it, you can almost do it. There's almost always a way. And I think just to give shouts out to Freddie W., I don't know if you watch YouTube videos a lot. Have you ever heard of Freddie W.?
I've heard of him. I haven't watched them. I'm mainly an Andrew Kramer guy or lynda.com kind of guy.
He is a visual effects guy.
Okay.
So you should just watch his stuff because he's like you and me. He wants to make movies first and foremost, and he wants to do stuff that's going to push his abilities to the absolute limit and challenge people to say, you know what, we shouldn't be able to do this, but we're going to do it anyway. And he makes these videos like, for example, he goes to the grocery store and his house is 1,000 feet off the ground. He parachutes to go, and he jumps out of his front door and he's using green screen technology. And it's the most basic, simplest way of using that green screen technology with the After Effects and all these different types of programs. And he's like, yeah, this is how you do it. And it's possible. And he shows you what's possible. So in the spirit of the independent filmmaker, nowadays visual effects is within the reach of everybody and pretty fascinating.
Well, just to talk about specifically, and I know you haven't seen much other than some rough cut trailers I probably showed 6 months to a year ago. The stuff that we shot on the stage looks really good. The stuff that we kept, like the cave scenes, you'll know what I'm talking about. Nobody else will, but the cave scenes look really well. And the stuff that we had to shoot with the creatures, they look good because it's outside and it doesn't look all artificial around them. But of course, the creatures stick out, so you get the yin and the yang a little bit there.
Yeah.
If I had to do it over again, I would probably try to find a practical way of doing some of the creatures. And some of the solutions we came up was like man in a suit, comped against green screen to put in other shots, and then puppet stuff that we comped in. So I would probably try to find that, or just rewrite some of the scenes so that they didn't involve so many creatures. Or so much interaction with the creatures, where somebody's running and the creature like swings overhead, because then you got that shadow. And if the creature is made like a giant lava monster, for example, you got to consider the sparks that might fly out or the smoke that's coming off them, and basically how they interact with the environment. And if your actors are interacting with that same environment, well, then you got to think about that. You mentioned you rented a battleship for your current project. I want to talk about this. And it's such a good segue because it's the same kind of film. It's an adventure kind of movie. And when I premiere Unearthly back home in London, Ontario, we already talked about this. We're hoping that we can get a little bit of a featurette or snippets of something to show the crowd, just to build off that similar genre love that we have. So why don't you tell us about everything that is Epic Adventures?
Okay, well, Epic Adventures is like a modern day Indiana Jones with a on-screen like archetype for characters like Star Wars. So there's like the Princess Leia type character, the Chewbacca type character, Han Solo, Luke Skywalker mixed together kind of thing. So there's that type of dynamic as far as the characters are concerned in the modern day Indiana Jones. But because of the limited budget and I knew that the challenges I was going to face as a filmmaker, I put it in the reality TV type genre. Okay. So imagine like Modern Family following around Indiana Jones nowadays.
Okay.
So here's this adventurer who's going after a treasure, and he somehow shanghais his friends to come along, and he must find this great treasure with the help of his friends. Of course, there's the nemesis, his Bullock character, who is up against him and one step ahead of the game every part of the film. it's just like a fun, thrilled, nonstop action, lighthearted movie.
So I know that you've posted some stills and stuff on your Facebook page from the shoot.
Yep.
And I know that you shot in and around Hamilton, which is the waterfall capital of Canada. So there's some
Yep.
really gorgeous, breathtaking scenery. But I got to ask, we just spent a good 40, 45 minutes talking about what a run and gun experience unearthly was to shoot an adventure film. And here you are jumping into, arguably a similar beast.
Yep.
What made the decision? Did you always want to do kind of like an Indiana Jones thing, and it was just a matter of finding the right way to do it, or why this combination?
Raiders of the Lost Ark was the very first movie I ever watched, where I looked at it from a filmmaker standpoint.
Okay.
It was the very first project, and from that point forward, I wanted to make movies. So when the opportunity to shoot Epic Adventures came along, it had kind of always been in the back of my head, at least for the characters, to make a story like this. So I thought, you know what, we have a little bit of a budget. I think I can get away with it. Life's too short. Seize the day. So I thought, I have the opportunity, let's take it. Yeah, it was challenging. And originally, to be honest with you, I was going to play the lead character. And just to give you a little bit of a history, the character Jason Carter, I have actually already been playing that character for 9 years, just in fun projects that I've been working on, a series called Pine Box Fast. It was kind of more like a Grand Theft Auto feel to it.
Okay.
And so when I made the transformation over to the Indiana Jones stuff, the hard part was because of timing, the people I were going to use to be my crew got stolen away for another bigger budgeted production. And so I lost half of the people who were going to help make a movie.
Right.
And I thought, great, what am I going to do now? Do I cancel the film or postpone it till the summer? Because it was getting cold out. And I thought, well, I need to find somebody who is able to do all the same stuff that I do. And as you mentioned before, I'm a little bit crazy when it comes to making movies. I'll jump off a cliff.
Yeah.
I'll jump in a river.
Check.
So I wrote the character to do the stuff that I was physically able to do. And I've jumped off cars. I've gone through windows, all sorts of stuff for movies. So I actually shot the first day, and I thought, you know what? We're never going to get this movie done in time. So I recast somebody who I had just met, and I put them through a day of what I call the Al test, where I put him through all the worst possible stunts I could possibly think of. And he passed with flying colors. And his name's Chris Thompson. Fantastic replacement. Such an enthusiastic actor, so dedicated to the project. And he knew instantly what the character was all about because he loved all the same movies that I loved. So he came on as the new Jason Carter, and once he came on, I was sure, you know what, whatever challenges we're going to have on this production, although there were a lot like unearthly, not only was I going to be able to take the unearthly experience, but I was also going to be able to just trust that the actor wasn't going to be, I'm too tired to do this, I'm too tired to do that. This guy's he's like a photocopy of the energy that I had, which is fantastic. So it made it a lot easier.
Now, you saying that you're going to act in something that you plan on directing and cutting and doing the visual effects for is as crazy as the moment before you came in on Earthly to shoot it, because I was planning on shooting it at that point, being
Right.
camera guy. So I'm glad you were able to, even though you got one day deep and it took going that far to realize it wasn't going to work. It's got to give you a lot of perspective on moving the chess pieces around, and not to call actors chess piece or cattle, but just seeing the whole game at play. You know what I mean? How much do you want to talk about Epic Adventures? Because I would love to know, just as an adventure enthusiast. I love Indiana Jones just like you. Obviously, I wrote on Earthly. What is the crux that they're going after? What is the treasure? If you don't want to reveal it, that's cool.
No, I don't mind. It's actually I did a lot of research on this, and it is one of the missing Fabergé eggs.
Okay.
I don't know if you know much about Fabergé eggs.
Not so much, other than their eggs decorated by a guy named Fabergé.
Exactly. Well,
Okay.
The Russian Tsar back in 1885, he had this gift made for his bride, who he had just more or less met, because she was missing her country, and he had this ornamental egg made with out of ceramic and gold and all these jewels, just to remind her of her homeland. But it wasn't just about the egg; it was about the surprise inside. So, you know, almost like the birth of the Kinder Egg.
I was going to say, this is like an ad for Kinder Egg all of a sudden with Easter around the corner.
Right, and on top of that, Russia is a huge Easter country, right? It's very Russian Orthodox churches and that kind of thing. So it became this yearly tradition that this Russian Tsar would have a Fabergé egg made, and it became such a monumental event in the country that people by the hundreds would come for the revealing of this secret that was inside the egg, and it became this tradition. So the story is that Jason Carter discovers this Fabergé egg that was never recorded in history. It was a secret egg made that has something inside it that is valuable beyond what we'd even be able to perceive. And it's this secret mystery that he's trying to solve before the enemy, who is David Winterborn.
The enemy's got to be Russian. That's the best part I love about this. You've got a Russian artifact, so now that gives you complete credit and credence to like go for a Russian villain.
Ironically, it's not.
Oh, come on! You had carte blanche there. Like I got to tell you, for Unearthly, for the longest time, I had a European villain, and they're like, "Why is he European? Why is he European?" I'm like, "All right, he's going to be American then. I'll give him a European name, but I'll make him American." So you have the perfect opportunity, and you don't cast a Russian. Okay, go ahead.
Well, the reason I picked David Winterborn is nowadays with the Occupy movement, and I'm slightly political, not heavily political, but the whole corporations manipulating governments and all that kind of thing. I thought, let's take an opportunity to have a social commentary as well. So he's in charge of a private military called ISIS, and it's like this military force that you pay for, and they come in and do whatever dirty work you want done. And I'm not going to get into it on here, but there's other military organizations nowadays that are becoming so big that they're becoming a threat to be reckoned with. So, for example, one military force has fighter jets, which is like it's a private military and they own fighter jets.
There's some capital behind that group.
Yeah, exactly. So these are like the modern day Nazis, so to speak. So they'll do their dirty work and they'll get away with it without any legal ramifications.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't want you to go on anymore because I'm already excited. I'm already sold on the pitch. A guy finds a Russian treasure that nobody's supposed to know about, and he knows because of the treasure that there's got to be something of great value inside. And then that's not even the story because there's a mystery around the object. That's what I love because a lot of these stories, including Unearthly, is about just finding the treasure and then going to the next step a little bit. But you've got the treasure kind of up front. In the mystery around it, it'd almost be like finding the Holy Grail of the Ark of the Covenant in Act 1 and then, dealing with it. Or maybe it's kind of like Tintin with the Secret of the Unicorn, how that ship is up front and then it's following the clues. So I think that's great. I'm going to wrap it up here because we're approaching the hour mark. But Alan, we always end these interviews with the fun let's play a game, a great what-if scenario. So I got 3 questions for you. Have complete fun with them. Go nuts. The first question is, okay, you get to work with Spielberg. What role do you take on? Why that role, and what kind of film do you want to work on with them?
Oh boy, that is like a dream come true question.
That's why I'm asking.
Well, I guess I wouldn't say first AD because that's really more of a type of job where you're running around and organizing things. But to be his DP, I know he's got a DP that he uses all the time.
Yeah, it's whatever you want.
To be his director of photography or his editor, one of those two, to be able to help him tell his story, because I really truly believe that you write a story 3 times. Once when you write it, once when you shoot it, and once when you edit it. So to be the DP or the editor, I would get the opportunity to be a part, to have a voice in that story.
But just not the writer, because it would be rewritten twice after that.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
It's kind of well, I don't necessarily believe it would be out of my hands if I wrote it, but just to see Steven Spielberg's work, either alongside when I'm editing it, or to be the DP and see him craft his crew, just to be a wallflower there would be amazing. So yeah, DP would be great for me.
If the situation arises, DP would be okay. Oh, okay, it's settle for editor. Okay, I like the humbleness here. Question 2. I think I may know the answer based on the last hour that we talked back and forth. You get to go back in time and work on any film in any capacity. What is it?
I think it would be Seven.
Okay.
Because David Fincher is my favorite director, and to be honest with you, I think just to be David Fincher's assistant, to stand by him and watch him work, I would probably be able to take so much away from that as far as the schooling process. It would be amazing just to watch all that come to play. Because I think Seven is really the perfect film. It's dark, yes. A lot of people don't like dark movies, but the kinetics, the writing, the characterization, the art, everything is just magic in that movie.
You see, I thought you were going to say Raiders for sure, and in Spielberg's DP, maybe editor.
Honestly, I think Spielberg at that point in his career, it was still a learning process for him, right?
Well, I don't know. He did Jaws and Close Encounters by that point in 1942 or 43.
I've made quite a few films at this point. Most of them were short films because it's just the way my career worked out. But I think at the point I'm at now is I'm able to say, I'm able to balance my cast, my crew, my writing, my editing. I see the picture more completely now. So I think from a standpoint, like if, for example, George Lucas, when he was making Star Wars, the very episode 4, I believe it was so good because he had so many, people plucking away at him and challenging him. And you watch the new Star Wars and he's like, they're garbage, in my opinion. And I think there was a lot of, oh, well, I'm going to say this and nobody's going to question me because I'm George Lucas.
Yeah, there's no constraints, there's no limit. He's not in a box trying to figure things out still a little bit. He got to do whatever he wanted. Money wasn't an issue, and time really wasn't an issue because time is just money.
Yes, but when it comes to David Fincher, he was like making this movie, and it wasn't super early in his career, but it was early enough where it was like he's comfortable, but at the same time, it wasn't. I'm a master, and I'm not a novice. I'm right in the point where I have to really prove myself.
Yeah, I think it's a critical film for him because it's after Alien 3, but it's before Fight Club. So he still had to cater a bit to the studios. He had some star power with Brad Pitt, Morgan Freeman, and Gwyneth Paltrow, and Kevin Spacey, of course. So that's an interesting choice.
And I think I'm getting close to the point where I'm gonna be reaching that part of my career where I'm like, I know most of the rules of the game, but I still have a lot to learn. And now I'm getting into bigger productions, so it's like I would be able to take away a lot from that at this point in my game.
Okay, so the third and final question I got for you, Alan. Are you ready?
I am.
Okay. If you could be any superhero, who would it be, why that superhero, and how would being that hero or having that hero's powers help you with your film or career goals?
Oh, man. I think...
I've never been able to predict an answer to this question. That every time I've asked, the person has always stumped me. So,
okay, well, my favorite superhero is Spider-Man, but I think for the purpose of filmmaking, I would have to say Superman, just because Superman able to whip around the world really quickly, get something that he needs, and whip around back, and I want this amazing shot, so I'm going to fly up 1,000 feet, and don't worry about it. I'll just film the train, and if it hits me, it's okay. So yeah, Superman.
Superman. Well, maybe a bit of a
space.
Superman. It's kind of a safe bet. I mean, there's not too much you can do as long as you're not making a film about kryptonite or scientific elements. I think you're going to be okay with that one. Alan, I want to thank you for taking the time away from your projects, an hour to relax, so to speak, even though you could classify it as work, for being on the show today. So
it's a lot of fun to be here. Thank you for having me.
Not a problem. So thanks again for everybody listening at home. This has been The Trenches. I'm your host, Rob McCallum, and this is the Wired In Network.